And welcome back. In a nation that still has a moderately free press, I wanted to bring you guys this article. As China eradicates memories of Tiananmen Square, globalists work toward world censorship. Today, China's state-run media is completely ignoring the massacre, which claimed the lives of several hundred, and Chinese censors are even blocking out foreign newscasts reporting on the anniversary. So if you guys aren't too up on the 25th anniversary of Tiananmen Square, let's take a look at some of the factoids of it. This is back in 1989. And it was for various reasons. Not everybody was out there for the exact same reason, but some of the reasons include economic reform, inflation, political corruption. So you have many students out there peaceful protesting for the large part. And then, things start to get a little dicey. The military is called in to squash the protest. So, conflicts happen, people get injured. So the military, the bigwigs of the military, they say, we don't want our troops to become sympathetic with the protesters, all these students out here. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a different set of troops that speak a different version of the Chinese language to come in and beat up on the protesters, to brutalize the protesters that way. So when the protesters yell at them, they won't be sympathetic because they won't understand what they're saying. And if you say this is completely crazy, this happens every year in the United States of America. That's why they bring foreign troops here to train. They do it every year in Florida. They did it just a couple weeks ago or a month or so ago. In Florida, bringing these foreign troops in, and everybody stands there and they clap and say, oh, isn't it so cool? They're shooting machine guns in the harbor or whatever. I'm like, these people are training to kill you. They're not training in some desert scenario to go fight somebody in Iraq or Afghanistan. They're training in a U.S. city to take over a U.S. city. But that's here or there. Let's focus on Tiananmen Square. Let's show you the very famous tank video. And I'm sure many of you guys have seen this before, but take a look at this. This is the footage I've actually never seen until today. This is the gentleman standing in front of the tank, actually climbing on top of the tank. Now, they don't show you this in the state-run media because they don't want you to know that you have power, just like this guy does. He gets on the tank. He's looking in the portholes. He's yelling at the guys. He's like, hey, man, come out there. He said, hey, the answer to 1984 is 1776, bud. And the guy comes out there, he says, hey, man, we don't like all that freedom out here. You better get on, boy. He said, no, man, I'm about my freedom. What you want to do? And this is the kind of attitude that you have to have, not just there in Tiananmen Square, but here in the United States of America, because you guys recall the Bundy Ranch. This is where free people, free patriots, gather together in support of Cliven Bundy, not just in support of Cliven Bundy, but just the notion that you could own your own private property, have your cattle graze on land, and not have to pay a bunch of fees to a bunch of bureaucrats who come out there with their guns and with their armored vehicles and come out there and bug their eyes out at you. But if you do the same, if you show up on a horse with a little six-shooter on your hip, oh, now you're a terrorist. Now you're a domestic threat. Now Harry Reid will get up there and talk about you and that you're nothing but a domestic terrorist. No, you're not a terrorist. You're a patriot, just like this guy. He says, no, I don't want your tanks out here. The people at the Bundy Ranch said, no, we don't want your police state here. Leave us alone. We're going to be out here in peace. So whether it's Tiananmen Square in 1989 or the Bundy Ranch in 2014, you have to continue to fight for your rights, and that's what we'll do right after this break when Rob Dew talks to an advocate of industrial hemp. Stay tuned. This is the InfoWars Nightly News.
Welcome back to the InfoWars Nightly News. Our next guest has been fighting for the legalization for hemp manufacturing and growing here in the United States since the late 90s. His name is Eric Pollitt. He's head of Global Hemp Incorporated and also the website globalhemp.com. And he recently helped author HB 5085, which is the Illinois Hemp Research Bill. And he joins us to tell us about that and other aspects and ways that we could get hemp grown in the United States, because there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to grow something that has no THC in it that could get you high and can be used for many other things. And without further ado, let's bring him in here. How's it going today, Eric?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on, Rob.
Great. So tell us a little bit about this bill, how it got through, and your other efforts. You've been doing this since the early 2000s, trying to get a bill introduced, and now you finally had some success. So take it away.
Yeah, in 1998, 1999, there were two different research bills here in Illinois, and both of them passed the House and the Senate. But Governor Ryan at the time vetoed both of them. And after that happened, basically that was it. There were several states that were doing legislation, with North Dakota being the first state. But also most of the legislation during that time would have been for research, but it was following the federal laws that require researchers to get a permit from the DEA. And the problem is the DEA will not give anyone a permit, save the one that they did give to Dr. David West, who did a research in Hawaii. So fast forward to today, the bill that I helped co-author, which was HB 5085, it originally started off as a licensing that would allow farmers to grow it, although the federal level doesn't allow for it. But it was shot down by the Illinois Department of Agriculture, not because they were against hemp by any means whatsoever at all. It just was a funding issue. So the bill was rewritten to be a research bill, which coincides very well with the farm bill that was passed this year. And the farm bill allows, first of all, it makes the distinction in the language that hemp and marijuana are not the same, that hemp is what it is. It's a low THC variety of cannabis, and it has lots of uses. And then what the farm bill did in addition to that is that it allows universities and state departments of agriculture to do research on hemp, as long as the state has hemp research or hemp legislation in place. And presently there are between 13 and 16 states that do allow for that. And then the final thing is, the real biggie, is that no DEA permit is required.
Right, so we don't have to get permission from our federal masters just to start growing a plant.
Well, the folks in Kentucky just ran into a problem, is that they had legislation already in place last year. They had 8 research projects lined up, and they imported hemp seed from Italy into Chicago, and U.S. Customs looked at it and said, hey, wait a minute, this is viable hemp seed. It will sprout and grow into a plant. Importing hemp seed that's sterilized, such as from Canada, is fine. So they called the Kentucky Agricultural Commissioner, and he said, hey, look, no, this is fine. Look at the farm bill. So they sent it down to Louisville, Kentucky, and that's where the DEA got involved with Customs, and there's a legal battle that happened for approximately 3 weeks. And as of last week, that hemp is actually in the ground right now as we speak. And the problem is the DEA said, hey, you need a Controlled Substance Act permit. And they said, look at the farm bill. The farm bill says no DEA permit required. So, you know, as I joke, it's kind of like the cartoon of the stork eating the frog, and the frog sitting there, you know, choking on the stork's throat, you know, trying to get that last bit. You know, they don't want to give up that easily. And fortunately, Kentucky has now paved the way for the rest of the states that want to continue with hemp research.
Well, that sounds good. And you actually, on your website, you posted a map that of the 50 states, and it has green for the states that are ready to start growing hemp, blue for the states that aren't, and then gray for the ones who are kind of in a gray area. Tell us a little bit about this map, and why is it that the southern states, the areas where you could grow hemp year-round, aren't interested in growing this product, it seems?
Well, the one thing I look at is even here in Illinois, when they were asked questions about, you know, such as the legislator that did this bill wasn't really for hemp before. And the thing is any hemp legislation before this farm bill that passed this year, it was really just ceremonial. It's been a very grassroots. It's been a very, it's protesting to the federal government. Hey, look, you know, we want the chance to grow hemp, but federal law supersedes state law. So it's kind of the states' rights. It's really been a states' rights issue. It's been a grassroots issue. And several states have passed legislation, and it's been ceremonial more than anything else. But you are correct when you look at the map and you coincide that the cotton-producing states, such as Texas, have not passed any legislation. However, California has. But the problem is that, you know, there's a drought problem with actually both of those states.
Right, and you were telling me earlier about an issue, I guess you're calling it peak cotton. Explain to people what that is. It's not like we're running out of cotton. It's not like it won't grow out of the ground, but where you can grow it, there's a problem.
Right. Yeah, there's a term that I kind of coined. I haven't heard it before, but I call it peak cotton. And what that is that cotton is grown everywhere in the world where it will grow. India, China, Egypt, the southern United States. And the thing is that as the developing nations get a higher standard of living, there's 2 things that, regardless of the religion or the language or anything else, there's 2 things that people do once they start having a little bit of extra money in their pocket. Number 1, they like to eat meat. Number 2, they like to have more clothing. And the thing is that there's only a certain amount of land that cotton can be grown on. And so you run into the problem that until just in the last 10 years, cotton had upwards to a 90% market share of clothing. However, now it's dropped down market share wise, but not volume wise. And what that means is that more and more people are buying more clothing, but they have to substitute another fiber. So what they've done is they've been using polyester in the last 10 years. And so synthetic has gone up quite a bit because, like I said, people in developing nations, they want to go from having, say, 5 shirts to having 30 shirts in their wardrobe. And so cotton can't be grown in Illinois, for example. So what would happen is once we have the hemp processing technology down to have a better textile that can be spun on cotton equipment, and it will complement cotton. We're not by any means looking at competing against cotton. What we want to do is be a complement, another natural fiber that's very similar to cotton and can be blended with cotton. And what we want to do is to get rid of so many synthetic fibers, because people do like cotton. It's just there's a finite amount of the resource available.
Right. And I was reading also in one of your articles that retail sales of hemp products exceeds $580 million. So this is obviously a huge market that we could bring to the United States and bring jobs to people. In addition to growing it, you have the manufacturing process and those type of deals that can be brought about. What are the different uses of hemp? You know, people know about the paper and the clothing, but what are some other uses out there that can be used with this product?
Yeah, if you look at hemp in general, it can be split into 2 different crops. You have the seed crop and you have a fiber crop. So Canada grows primarily seed crop, and the seeds go into different foods. So they can get rid of the shell, and they have what's called hemp hearts, or they can take the seed and press it for oil. And they also have a protein powder, and those are all, the majority are organic foods. And on the side of fiber is quite a bit different, with the low end being paper, and the high end being textiles. But in between the two, you have composite grade. And what they're doing is that Mercedes-Benz actually pioneered the research back in the late 1980s, because Germany has, I think it's 80 million people, but it's in an area about the size of Montana. And what they did is Germany said, hey, we've built the last landfill. And they said, we can't just keep throwing all this stuff in the landfill. So there's never been a problem with recycling the metal of a car, but the problem is the interior, you know, the dashboards, all that kind of stuff. And also to increase the fuel mileage, what they did is they came up with a matting material that's 50% polypropylene, which is a plastic, and 50% natural fiber, with hemp, flax, and kenaf being the top 3 bast fibers that are used for that purpose. And what they do is, number one, it's less expensive for the company, so that's a positive thing. Number 2, there's less wear and tear on the machinery when they mold the parts. It's better for the workers, and then it gets the equivalent of the EPA off the company's backs, and it's a recyclable material at the end of its life. And like I said earlier, it's a lighter weight material, so if you can decrease the weight of the car by 20 pounds, everything counts in doing that. And the composite markets are huge. With plastics in general are the 3rd largest industry in the United States after automobiles and steel. So plastics are huge. There's a huge growth potential for it. And plastics are dependent on the price of petroleum. We know that the price of petroleum is significantly higher now than it was before Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. And there's a growing demand throughout the world for more and more petroleum, so we don't really see the price going down. So what they do is they use the hemp fiber kind of as a reinforcement, kind of like rebar in concrete. And the hemp fiber is very strong, and that's what allows for when you're sitting in your car and you can put your elbow on the car door panel. There's a 90-degree angle there, and only hemp and flax can really do that. So there's a company in northern Indiana, Elkhart, Indiana, called FlexForm Technologies, and they produce that matting material. But presently, they're importing all the hemp fiber from Europe, and they use actually more kenaf, which is a subtropical crop related to okra and cotton, and so it doesn't really grow in the United States that well. And they bring in all the kenaf from Southeast Asia. And the thing is if we grow hemp in the United States, it really a bulky